Yeah, I've been listening to Jingle Bells all week, played by 30 trumpets, so that guitar playing was lovely. Makes a change. The wolf. She wants you to lie down with the wolf, the one who eats chalk to make his words as white as snow, so each letter lands in a puff of smoke, the one who likes red, who stays in bed so long he could become just another pattern in the wallpaper. She wants you to lie down with the wolf, the one she is clothed in wool from the mountain sheep, the one who is not as he appears, the one who treads time beneath his paws, which are always caked in flour, the one the children sing of. If you lie down with the wolf, the one who carries the wind in his belly, the one who can take a house from you, the one who hides in shadow, so the boy who cries wolf is a liar, shall stroke your hair and smile secrets at you, slit him open and fill him with stones, and watch you both sink. The poem that I'm going to read, the poem that won the Geoffrey Dermer Prize, which I wouldn't normally say because I think it's a bit crass, but in the judge's report it said that it was Fred de Guer who was the judge, and he said it was a convincing version of Dante's Lower Rings of Hell. It's actually just about the Wetherspoons in Barrow-in-Furness, where I live. I did feel quite guilty about that. Tuesday at Wetherspoons. All the men have comb-overs, bellies like cakes just baked, risen to roundness. The women tilt on their chairs, laughter faked, like mugs about to fall, cheekbones sharp as sadness. When the men stand together, head for the bar like cattle, I don't understand why a woman reaches across, unfolds his napkin, arranges his knife and fork to either side of his plate. They're all doing it, arranging, organising, all talk stopped until the men, oblivious, return. My feet slide towards a man with one hand between his thighs, patience in his eyes, who says, "You can learn to love me." Ketchup on the hand that cups my chin, ketchup around his mouth, now hardening on my skin. This next poem, an annual event for me, is playing in the Messiah, playing trumpet in the Messiah, which I get really stressed about because it's got a really hard trumpet part, or I find it hard anyway. And last year was even worse because it was a memorial concert for the victims of the shootings in West Cumbria. So this is about that. The Messiah, St. Bees Priory. Everywhere is covered in snow, and the priory is a huge mouth swallowing the cold, as if the snow has come to dispel all memory. A day in June, the sudden heat of it, the constant call of sirens. I was standing on a hill in Barrow, looking over the water to Millom, knowing the police cars rushing past would be too late. The roads that brought the gunman there would stop them finding him. Ascombe, Broughton, Ravenglass, and all the tops of Corney Fell between, and people cutting hedges, riding bikes who hadn't heard the news, who would stop and help a passing driver without thinking. Today, November snow makes us more inclined to sit together, the violins gathered round a heater, the breath of singers caught in air, the audience still in hats and coats and scarves huddle closer, then lean forward as I call the dead to listen. They are singing hallelujah to forget that afternoon when the sun was a hand on the back of their necks, when villages hardly talked about before were the names on everybody's lips. So I'm going to try and be a bit more upbeat now. Doesn't happen. I'm carrying this. I'm not going to read all of these, by the way, so don't get worried. I'm carrying it around because I'm trying to finish my portfolio for my MA at Manchester Met, which is where I met Rachel. And I'm carrying them around so that it becomes physically real instead of this figment that it exists in my imagination. And I've been going on these mad trips around the country to workshops to try and get enough lines for this portfolio. So a couple of Saturdays ago, I got the 6 o'clock train from Barrow to go to a workshop in Sheffield. So train journey, Barrow to Sheffield. Even though the train is usually full of people I don't like, who play music obnoxiously loud or talk into their phones and tell the whole carriage and their mother how they're afraid of dying even though they're only 25, even though the fluorescent lights and the dark outside make my face look like a dinner plate, even though it's always cold around my ankles and there's chewing gum stuck to the table and the guard is rude and bashes me with his ticket box, even though the toilet smells like nothing will ever be clean again, even though the voice that announces the station says Bancaster instead of Lancaster, never pronouncing the L's correctly. Still, I love the train, its sheer unstoppability, its relentless pressing on, and the way the track has to stretch its limbs across the estuary as the sheep eat greedily at the salty grass, and thinking that if the sheep aren't rounded up, will they stand and let the tide come in, because that's what sheep do, they don't save themselves, and knowing people have drowned out there, like the father who put his son on his shoulders as the water rose past his knees and waist and chest, and rang the Coast Guard, who talked to him and tried to find him, but the fog came down, and though he could hear the road, he didn't know which way to turn. But in a train there are no choices, just one direction, one decision you must stick to. This morning the sun came up in Bolton and all the sky was red, and a man in a suit fell asleep and dribbled on my shoulder till the trolley came round and rattled loudly, and he woke up with a start and shouted, "I've got to find the sword." Old woman, you were frightened of nothing, old woman. Not of living on the estate or of walking in the dark. No, never frightened of getting on the wrong bus or noises in the night, not even when you were burgled, a cupboard dragged across to block your bedroom door, to lock you in. No, you weren't frightened the next day of the space the TV left, of coming back to an empty house. No, never frightened of your son who used to steal from you, or when words started to fade and hum and numbers on your bingo card began to blur, not when you started to forget where you lived and how to get dressed and what your daughters' names were and how many grandchildren you had. You weren't frightened when you started to get tired of walking, when day and night became arbitrary and you found yourself making dinner at midnight or sleeping in the afternoon. You weren't frightened when the shadows became your mother, reappearing after all these years, your father asking you to keep house for him again. You weren't frightened until you fell and lay for hours in the dark and the phone was out of reach and the number was slipping from your hand. That's loosely based on my grandma who died a couple of months ago. And also a couple of months ago, a friend asked me to go to a spiritualist church with her, and I thought I might as well go because I might get a poem out of it, which is a bit mercenary. And I did. So, Hartley Street Spiritualist Church. The first hymn is I Believe in Angels by ABBA. No music because Jean has forgotten the tape. We sing without, led from the front by a medium with long red hair who announces that a dog is in the room and is at this very moment sitting next to the tea urn. This means someone is ready to be healed. Another medium stands, running coloured ribbons through her hands, points behind her and says a woman is pacing up and down, flicking her hair and pouting. And will anyone claim her? Does anyone have a relative who would do such a thing? And then the psychic artist stands up, unrolls a scroll, a picture that he drew many years ago in anticipation of this day, a man in a flat cap with a cigarette, a man who used to get back from work and watch the sun go down from his back porch and smoke and smoke. And he says, "This is your granddad, isn't it?" to a woman who nods vigorously. And then he starts to draw an old lady with short hair who he says is standing next to me. And am I feeling warm because this is the energy of spirit? And do I ever feel I'm being followed, even though there's no one there, because this is the energy of spirit? And come to think of it, I think I am warm, but that might be because everybody is staring, and he is whispering over and over, "It's your grandma, isn't it?" And I believe him. I want to think she's there, even though in his drawing she has permed hair and glasses. He gives me the image of this woman. Later on, I bin it, but before we go, we sing "I Believe in Angels" again. And poems don't have to be true, I know, but everything in that poem actually happened at the Spiritualist Church. I should be a little fair because they were mediums in training, which I didn't even realise that you could get, so they were just training to be mediums. So, this next poem, I've taken a line from a Bosnian poet called Mak Dizdar. And when I took this to my critiquing group, they said, "Oh, I absolutely love the first line." And I said, "That's the one that I've stolen from the other poem." But, rain. We need to learn again to listen to the rain, to sit for hours and watch it skitter across the tarmac of a car park, the way it blinds the windscreen with mist or just itself, its forcefulness, the metal demand of rain on caravan roofs, or the way it plucks at the sheet of a lake, how the very act of rush as it speeds towards an open drain is just what movement means. We need to learn the names of all the clouds that carry rain, to learn their shapes by heart, to drive on a road covered with river mist from rain. We must travel to the towns built next to lakes, the ones that worship rain, where the smell of it is everywhere, to find the watermarks on buildings, see how the bridges were shrugged off, how the ground gave way. We need to learn again to live like rain. If we could land accompanied by thunder and wear away our surroundings purely with our passing and let our lives get bigger, if we could fill them in the same way rain fills the emptiness it meets, if we could inhabit the space between us, if we were no longer islands, if we were only water, if you were rain, then I would listen. I got married in July. So it's brought forth a few poems about, in fact, just the next two, being married. We swear we'll never be like those couples who say hello together in a sing-song voice, the same pitch and timbre. We'll never buy coats of the same shade and walk through Windermere in the rain, or lift our matching suitcases onto a train. I'll never go climbing in the Isle of Skye just to please you. You won't listen to my poetry unless you really want to. We'll stay as separate as two cities must stay, one trading in metal, the other in tourism. And of course, once you get married, you start writing poems about arguments, clearly. I hesitated before that last poem because I was checking there was no people in matching coats that I would offend by that poem. I don't think there is. In praise of arguing. And the vacuum cleaner flew down the stairs like a song, and the hiking boots launched themselves along the landing. And one half of the house hated the other half, and the blinds wound themselves around each other. And the doors flung themselves into the street and flounced away, and the washing gathered in corners and sulked. And the bed collapsed and was held up by books, and the walls developed scars, and it was a glorious, glorious year. This is my last poem, so thank you for inviting me. I'm sorry it was a bit of a sad occasion, but yeah. I've stolen this idea from another poem as well. I'm a magpie. Matthew Sweeney wrote a poem about a retired thief. I can't say the word thief. Burglar, retired burglar. So I did one about a retired poet. Retirement. The poet has cut his hair and bought a flat in the city. At night he talks to the sky but doesn't write it down. When he hears a pigeon call, he doesn't compare it to anything. even in his head. Each night from the window, all he sees are buildings. He ignores how the silver in the roof tiles looks like stars, how the shadow of a cat appears big as a tiger with the moon behind it. He's given his poems away, left them on bus seats, scattered the pages of his unfinished collection on the rails of the tube. Sometimes he imagines the footprints of the tube mice, sooty on his words, the swirl of pages showing off in the backdraft of a train. Thank you very much.